New England in the market in the draft for a quarterback still? Of course they might be. Question is who's available on that front. And our friend from NFL Media Group, the better half of Move the Sticks podcast, Bucky Brooks here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Bucky Brooks?
I'm good, Rich. How's everything?
I am better for talking to you. So let's jump into it here. Do you think New England is in the market for a first-round quarterback, which, as you know, is not the MO of Bill Belichick? One would think maybe it's because Tom Brady was sitting there for all those years, but do you think that could be actually the new MO for New England going into this draft, and if so, who? Bucky.
I think it very much could be in play. I think, obviously, it's about value, and if they feel like they can get in striking distance to get one of the big four quarterbacks, I think they absolutely would make that move. And when I mean the big four, it's the usual suspects and whatever, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. I think if they can get in range to get one of those guys, I think they will do it. I know there'd be some discussion about Mac Jones. I just don't know in terms of how New England, when they made the decision to run it back with Cam Newton, I wonder if they're shifting their offensive philosophy and maybe they find a young quarterback who has similar skills so they can build a new and improved offensive approach that allows them to play the way that they want to play, which is take care of the ball, run it, play great defense, and find a way to win games by not beating themselves.
Interesting. So the whole, chatter, and we all know what chatter's worth in our business, certainly around this time of year, Bucky Brooks, but the chatter of, New England, Bill Belichick is tight with Nick Saban, so he'll be as plugged in on Mac Jones as he could possibly be, and that might be certainly sitting there at 15, a rare spot for New England to be sitting in the first round. That might be a good spot for him there. But you're thinking maybe the Cam Newton signing will give you an indication as to who New England would be looking at in the draft.
Well, I think that's how they want to play. If you go back and look, remember, they played a certain style for 20 years with Tom Brady. And because of that, we were accustomed to seeing them have maybe a statuesque pocket passer. That's how Josh McDaniels and those guys want to play. But if you go back and you really look at New England, and you look at the quarterbacks that have given them problems over the years, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, mobile playmakers, because mobile playmakers allow you to be imperfect with your personnel. You don't have to have the best offensive line. You may not need to have A-level receivers because the quarterback can make it right with his athleticism. We have seen the league shift towards a more athletic player at that position. I believe from a defensive standpoint, Belichick understands the challenge of that. Maybe he wants to get into that lane because he knows what it causes, the headaches that it causes for defensive play callers around the league when you have a player that can do those things from the pocket.
Fascinating. Bucky Brooks here on the Rich Eisen Show. So where do you stand on the quarterbacks currently, sitting here after what would have been a combine for all of us? Your evaluation so far of this group would be what, Bucky?
In order, I would go Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and then Mac Jones with the separation behind those guys. Trevor Lawrence, I would say, is number one. I think everyone kind of understands who he is. I kind of describe him as Justin Herbert plus, meaning he has all the things that Justin Herbert brings, but maybe even a little more sizzle when it comes to his arm talent and those things. And that's saying a lot based on how Justin Herbert played. I think Justin Fields is maybe the underrated quarterback prospect in this class because we don't really talk enough about him. We nitpicked his game. We talked about how he didn't play well versus Indiana and Northwestern. But when you really look at him play, he's a very talented player. I would say arguably he and Trevor Lawrence have always been 1 and 2 from the time they were in high school. I think his talent warrants that kind of consideration. I think people need to be careful of making the evaluation of him based on the offensive system that he played in, which had a lot of option reads where he's waiting on wide receivers to declare which way they're going before he releases it. He is a very talented player, and I think as we've looked at Josh Allen have success with the Buffalo Bills, I think we need to have our imagination in that lane when we think about Justin Fields. Zach Wilson is the guy who has really come out of nowhere to be at the top of the charts. Zach Wilson was a guy who had to win a quarterback competition prior to last season. He wins it, and then he dazzles at BYU. Tremendous arm talent, great athlete, plays the game the way that you want to see it played, going through reads, and just looking very natural doing it. The one concern will be he didn't play against a high level of competition, not through any fault of BYU's or his own. They just didn't play A-level games. And the one game that they played against Coastal Carolina wasn't his best. He had some flashes, but it wasn't his best game, so you worry about that. Trey Lance, who had his pro day today, is outstanding as a prospect. And I think, unfortunate for him, he decided to play in a one-game showcase this year with a team that's not nearly as good as they've been in the past because North Dakota State got beat this year after he left. And so we have that stain on our brain that, maybe he's not as good as we thought. But if you go back and look at 2019, he's talented. He's a dual-threat playmaker, 2,700 passing yards, over 1,000 rushing yards. He's very, very talented. And so I think it's a unique class where you have guys that can do it a bunch of different ways. And now it's about going to the ice cream shop and deciding what flavor do I want today, what tickles my fancy, because I think all these guys have the opportunity to be fantastic.
Bucky Brooks here on the Rich Eisen Show. You're the first of this week for sure to have Justin Fields above Zach Wilson on their quarterback draft depth chart. So I will ask you the question I'm asking everybody else with the question of Darnold or second overall selection on a draft choice quarterback short of Deshaun Watson based on our colleagues. And I have Jim Trotter on in hour number 3, Steve Weich and he on Huddle and Flow getting something from David Culley that makes us think that Watson might not be in Houston when it's all said and done. Barring that, what do you think the Jets should do at number 2 overall, Bucky?
Look, Sam Darnold has been dealt a bad hand. He hasn't had all the weapons that you would necessarily want to see. He hasn't had maybe the support that you want from a head coach. But I believe it's in the best interest of the Jets to hit the reset button at quarterback because we've seen the best way to build a Super Bowl contender is to build your team around a quarterback playing on an original rookie deal. Cost certainty allows you to build up the rest of the team, and ultimately the team that wins is the best team. That's why we've seen in the last 10 Super Bowls, 8 teams that have had quarterbacks playing on rookie deals. If you take Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, one, I think you're getting a better prospect and player than you were getting with Sam Darnold. I think in the system that they're going to play, which is an extension of the Kyle Shanahan system, run game, play action, boots, young quarterbacks should be able to flourish in that. Just look at what Baker Mayfield was able to do under Kevin Stefanski. I think by having a young quarterback on a really cheap and team-friendly deal, it allows you to build up the rest of the team. And then in 2 years, maybe you have a team that is a legitimate contender for a playoff bid because you've been able to allocate the resources evenly around the team as opposed to having to pick up the fifth-year option and eventually pay Sam Darnold a big deal when his play hasn't necessarily warranted that.
Justin Fields is a Jet, you think, first night of the draft. That's what you're thinking, right?
I would say Justin Fields because I like Justin Fields as a better player. But if you're asking me who I think the Jets will pick, I think they're going to pick Zach Wilson.
Why?
Zach Wilson, for me, because, see, like, Rich is tough. I just think Justin Fields is a better player. I think some like the way that Zach Fields plays the game. He plays it like a quarterback should play. He goes through his progression. He goes through the reads. He has tremendous arm talent. He has the athleticism and those things. And so I think for them, they may be fascinated by that potential. I would say that Justin Fields, to me, has a higher ceiling. Bigger, faster, stronger, more dynamic. We've seen him play big-time competition in the Big Ten. No slight to what BYU has been able to face, but it's different. And so for me, I'm willing to gamble on Justin Fields over Zach Wilson, even though I think Zach Wilson will be the second quarterback to come off the board.
So you think Arthur Smith snaps Justin Fields up, a kid who went from Georgia to the Ohio State because they went with Jacob Fromm instead. So do you think the Falcons jump on him at 4?
I think it would make a lot of sense if they did, because I think if you get him, I know it's a hometown hero. He's playing right there in Atlanta. He's from Georgia. It would make a lot of sense to me. Also, when you think about the way that Arthur constructed the offense for Ryan Tannehill, a mobile, athletic quarterback who was able to really add to the running game by being able to boot out the back door and throw play passes, which are really easy for quarterbacks because it really creates huge separation and open window. I think that will work. And also because Matt Ryan is there, there's not a rush to get him on the field. And I know we sit here and say that every year guys aren't ready to play or whatever. We see these young guys get on the field. But I think in that situation, he would be the perfect mentor in terms of Matt Ryan. It would give them a natural bridge to the next era. So, yes, I think Justin Fields would be the right pick for them at number 4.
A few more minutes left with Bucky Brooks here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who are we not talking about because we're so focused on the quarterbacks in this draft? Who's a gem? Who's so special that we are not talking about in this current draft class, Bucky?
I'm a fan of the Big Ten, and I'm going to talk about Micah Parsons, the linebacker from Penn State. In a normal year, we will be talking about him and what he brings to the table. Dynamic playmaker on the second level. We saw the impact that Devin White had on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. Mm-hmm. I think Michael Parsons is a unique defender. He can hit, he can run, he can cover, he can give you the nastiness that you want to see. I think he is someone that, for whatever reason, is being undervalued in the process. I think when we look back at the end of next season, we're going to say, man, how did we miss out on Michael Parsons? He's a dominant player, and we just didn't talk about him enough, partially because he didn't play his final season after opting out due to COVID.
So who jumps on him? Who do you think? Is he top 10 when it's all said and done?
I think he should be top 10. I would keep an eye on Detroit. I would also keep an eye on if the New England Patriots don't make a move at quarterback and he's somehow in range, he is, to me, a Patriot because of his versatility, his toughness, and what I believe the Patriots want to get back to.
Yeah, Bill does like Big Ten guys, as you know. Lastly, Bucky, I'll ask you, what do you think about the general sense that Herbert's better than Tua, will always be better than Tua, and the Dolphins screwed that one up, much to the Chargers' delight? What do you think about that knee-jerk year one reaction, potentially? Or is it knee-jerk? What do you think of that?
I think it's very much a knee-jerk reaction. As much as I like what Fitzpatrick was able to do, I think the reason why the Dolphins wanted Tua at the time is because Tua was going to take care of the football. We know that turnover margin is the number one deciding factor in who and wins and loses games. Tua Tagovailoa is going to be outstanding in this league. I think what we have to remember is look at the weapons that were on the outside. And I know Fitz had some success doing it, but he's an off-the-cuff, unscripted playmaker. When you have Tua surrounded by weapons on the outside, which they will upgrade in free agency and in the draft, you're going to see a pass-first point guard who distributes the rock. And so when he distributes the rock and let the weapons eat, you're going to see a very efficient offense from the Dolphins, and I think you will see them score points. And he will remind us very quickly, oh, this is the tank for Tua scenario. This is why we had that conversation. I think people really jumped off the bandwagon. I think they'll jump back on after watching them perform in 2021.
Okay, and who do you think the Bears, last one for you, I could talk to you all day, who do you think the Bears should get at quarterback? Again, Deshaun Watson, if he becomes available, and that's why the Texans could literally make everyone blush when they look at the Herschel Walker trade. You know what I'm saying? Like they could pull this thing off because there's so many people that would be so desperate for it. I don't know if the Bears have the capital for that anyway. What do you think the Bears, knowing their front office situation, knowing the coaching situation, what do you think they're going to do when all the pieces land, Bucky?
Well, I mean, I think there's certainly going to be serious players for Russell Wilson. I think they want to go all in and try and figure out a way to get it done. If, for whatever reason, they're not able to get Russell done in Chicago, I think the next guy to cast your eyes on would be Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton played under the offensive coordinator, Bill Lazor, because they are on a one-and-done scenario where they have to win. I don't think they can wait on a young guy. I would expect Andy Dalton to be in play if they can't pull the trigger on Russell Wilson.
Bucky, thanks for the call. Let's do this a little bit more often. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, appreciate it, Rich.
You got it. At Bucky Brooks on Twitter, at Big Play Football on Instagram. I follow him. You should too. He and Daniel Jeremiah at Move the Sticks Podcast. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.